Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Welcome to Deep Pockets with Petra Söderling, the show about government and innovation. I hope you enjoy today's episode and the music created by a New Orleans jazz icon Leroy Jones. Find this and other Leroy Jones tunes wherever you get your music. A bit less than a year ago, I was invited to a small group of individuals from different countries to persuade their governments to support an upcoming vote in the United Nations. That was to name 2025 as the International Year of Quantum. Finland was obviously going to support this, so not much lobbying needed. The resolution passed, and we celebrated the inauguration at the Parisian headquarters of UNESCO on February the 4th and 5th of 2025, almost exactly 1 year ago. I didn't make a Deep Pockets episode from Paris, but I did write a Substack article on February 12th, 2025. You can find it under my Substack. I will post a link in the show notes. I also have an episode with Jesus Sanchez Herrero, someone I met in Paris, where we talk about creativity and polymaths. It's one of our longest episodes, but it's really interesting, and I do recommend that you find that from Deep Pockets podcast. But before all of this, to prepare for the launch, I spoke with Claudia Fracchiolla on June 25th, 2024. Claudia is the head of public engagement at the American Physical Society, and she serves as the Secretariat Coordinator for the UNESCO-endorsed International Year of Quantum Science and Technology, IYQ in short. You can find this conversation in the Deep Pockets podcast, Season 4, Episode 2. Then fast forward, 2025 is now over, and the IYQ is preparing to host the closing ceremony, which will be held in Ghana on the 10th and 11th of February 2026. My immense honor is to introduce to you for the second time Claudia Fracchiolla, the Secretariat Coordinator for IYQ. Welcome back to Deep Pockets, Claudia.
Thanks, Petra. It's really good to be back. Unbelievable that so long
It
have gone.
was so long, I know. I can't believe it was 18 months ago. Okay, before we go into the topic, let me just say how much I love the acronym IYQ. It really forces you to question your personal relationship with the quantum technology, doesn't it?
You pointed out, you coined it. I did not notice it before.
Yeah,
yes,
it's like why am I here? What am I doing here? Okay, so let's kick this off by asking you, can you remind the audience of what the objectives were for the year, and do you think those objectives have been reached?
Sure. So I think the biggest objective we had was actually to build global awareness, helping more people understand that quantum isn't just like these weird words that we hear in like superhero movies or something like that, or like a futuristic computer, but it is a foundational science that is already present in technologies that we rely on, and it's becoming part of how society functions. The second part of that was also, building global participation. And not just meaning like as a celebration for a few countries, but like, bringing in more regions to realize, okay, that quantum is important. I mean, as you said it, for getting the proclamation done, we had to convince countries, right? And so it was really good to bring this to the floor of the UN National General Assembly, because then many countries were starting to reflect, maybe I should start thinking about developing my own quantum strategy. So I think that has been very important. And I think this third goal, which I think it's the stage that we're moving into, we have seen some stuff, but we're moving more into that, is thinking about responsible quantum, right? So shaping a culture early. We are at a stage in quantum science and technologies where we have to start making decisions now about access, standards, education, pathways, and like governance. How will that look and who's benefiting that? So we're trying to put responsibility on the agenda from the start, right? Like this is a topic about inclusion, raising awareness about the dual use of quantum science and technologies, workforce development beyond, just like the elite pipelines and PhDs, and, honest engagement with the public to build trust rather than just the hype. So did we reach the objectives? I mean, I think that we have made amazing progress towards all of them. We have shown that there is a lot of interest, like never have been so much interest in an international science year as there was for quantum, like 72 countries in the end officially sign up into sponsoring this initiative. So the appetite is there. And it has produced a lot of relationships and connections, networking, infrastructure, but it's just the beginning. Like we're just starting with this work. So I think that the closing ceremony will be more of a pivoting from the celebration to the sustainability building of this initiative.
Perfect. So on that note, you sent me a little bit of material before this call, and there's a couple of images that I want to focus on. One of them is the map of all the events that took place, and this is it's just incredible. It's hundreds and hundreds of events all around the world, and as you said, like truly a global effort. Delightful amounts of events in Latin America and Africa. But to me, it still looks like Europe hosted the most. Is that just because I'm not zooming correctly, or was this really the case?
I think there's several layers of that question, right? So let me clarify, the initiatives that are shown in the map is people who actually went on and registered their initiative on the website, right? So there were many activities that were happening that unfortunately people did not have the capacity to, or didn't know that there was a way of registering so that it would showcase on our website. So that's one thing. I would say yes, Europe shows very strongly, but that means that Europe has a lot of established ecosystem. There's a lot of universities close together. There's strong regional programs. There's mobility, and something that I've always said, they are very mature on the culture of engaging the public. That is not the case for many other world regions. So I think that translates into more visibility of the events, right? And they also have more capacity, like personnel that can track and go and upload the information on the website. But I think that we have big winners, right? We are seeing a lot of density and activities that in regions that we might have not seen as much before, right? These is things happening in community centers, local universities and stuff in places like South America and Africa. And many times, as I said, these don't necessarily get logged in. But I have noticed really a growth in Latin America and Africa as one of the most meaningful signals of this year. Many of those events weren't just a plug and play, but they were built long-standing programs. So many hackathons or schools for undergraduate students interested in understanding what a career path in quantum will look like, right? So these are more than just a one-day event. And I think that this is really meaningful because this is just creating that momentum, right? I hope to see that these kind of initiatives will continue on as even the year ends. So I'll say that yes, without making a stats report, there has been a distribution. Yes, Europe is strongest, but we have seen also who's doing the work, and it's very important to see that this has come from universities. Obviously, what I was concerned at the beginning, that it was going to be mostly events around research conference and things like that, and no, we have seen a good breadth of type of activities, like from poetry contests
Wow.
to art installations and things like that have gone beyond traditional engagement with the public about a scientific topic. So I think that Europe is dense in activity and reporting, but there is more exciting stories being told in what we see.
Yeah, absolutely. You sent me some statistics behind these events, and there's the one who's doing the work. There's a pie chart that about half was mixed collaboration, and there's a big chunk for higher ed and research, NGO, government, industry. And then the focus of the event is mostly education and training. So am I correct in assuming that because this was the year was about raising awareness and increasing participation, that during this year you did events where you engage a lot of people and there's a lot of education and participation by artists and so forth. But then going forward, maybe do you see that the role of industry would be increasing? Or how do you see it going forward?
So first, let me add a clarification. So these were grassroots events, right? This was not necessarily events that we at the IOIQ Secretariat coordinated or organized. We supported 20 global initiatives. So these were specific events. Like we tried to make sure that there was a global event in each region, and these were like bigger events. But the large majority are grassroots events. I think that definitely industry should plug in more and play a more significant role as we move further in the sustainability aspect of these quantum ecosystem. I think that they were more on the sidelines, kind of observing what was happening and what was the intake. They're very engaged in the development aspect of these technologies, but as we move into the second stage of supporting and building these quantum ecosystem responsibly, industry definitely needs to get a bit more of their heels in and then have more conversations across sectors, not just with policymakers, but also like society in itself and researchers, right? Like if we think about responsible quantum, we need to have all the parties involved in having these conversations to understand the aspect of access and the dual purpose of these technologies.
I love it, love it. So let's go deeper into this theme of global community and all the different players in there, or the global ecosystem. The closing ceremony is in Ghana, so I'm assuming this highlights the importance of everyone's role in building the quantum ecosystem and the quantum industry. I have been writing national quantum strategies for different countries and regions, so I have my own thinking behind the role of developing countries. But I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it. Is the quantum ecosystem in Africa, for example, is it different from the ones in Europe or North America? Just as examples. I mean, when researchers and product creators go to developing countries, what can they expect to happen there? And do you think that developing countries have something unique to offer to the global quantum industry?
Sure. So before I answer, I want to give a big shout out to Ghana, because many people might not know, but it was Ghana actually the country that made this proclamation a reality. Because to get a year proclaim, we needed a country to bring the proposal forward to the floor. And so while Mexico was the country that brought it into the UNESCO General Conference, it was Ghana who brought the proposal at the UN General Assembly and gathered the support for the proclamation to be approved. So
Amazing.
Big shout out to Ghana. Yeah. And that's why the closing ceremony is happening there. But going back to your question, so I love this question, and I'll take a little bit of digesting and explaining because I don't want to. One thing that I really worried about is that often it seems like, oh, quantum has arrived in developing countries. What does this mean, right? We do know, and we have one of the slogans of IOIQs is that quantum is global, right? And is for everyone. And talent is everywhere. But something that I highlight often is that opportunity is not evenly distributed. Not everyone has the same access. And we need to be very careful about not repeating many of the errors that we have done with like the digital era and, making maybe the global south just users of these technologies rather than participating in the different aspects of even developing these technologies. So is the quantum ecosystem in Africa different from Europe and North America? Yes, right? Like the priorities and the constraints are very different. And that's actually, I think, a strength rather than a weakness. So like when we are talking about quantum ecosystem, people tend to think very much about the quantum computers mostly because that's what is on the news more frequently. But there's other quantum technologies that are already out there that are really important and that they might have most immediate value proposition for regions like Africa, which is like, let's say, like quantum sensing or, communications and measurement and things like that. So it's important to talk about the capabilities that connect to infrastructure, the climate resilience, agriculture, health systems, all of that, right, to determine what the quantum strategy for each country or region is. And so in that sense, it is very different. On the aspect of like, okay, researchers and product creators can expect, I think that it's important that it's a partnership and not extraction, right? So like, again, going back to responsible quantum ecosystems, we're not trying, like, I don't want to see the global north as trying to poach the talent from the global south, but actually build connections and partnerships. So I think that one thing that I have appreciated with different partnerships that I've seen form is like, for example, countries in South America are in partnership with different organizations here in Europe, talking about developing their own specific quantum strategies for a very specific problem. Or, for example, I've been part of different conversations with people from Ghana who are bringing experts in to talk about their local experts to understand how people in these different regions outside of Ghana have developed their own quantum strategies so that they can think and reflect about that and then help build their own infrastructure and strategy. So I think that that's a big part of what we need to consider, that we need to ask ourselves about. Each country has their unique challenge, right? Like different problem sets, different workforce growth potential, different education pathways, and different governance perspective. The governance part is really important because I think that a lot of those conversations will need to happen at a global organization setting, given the dual purpose of a lot of these quantum technologies. So Ghana, as the closing ceremony host, I think it is symbolical and practical, right? It's saying like quantum future is not just written by only a few, but there is a global ecosystem that has to be built with everyone, or it won't be stable, right? Like in the parts, like economically, ethically, and geopolitically. Like if we start thinking about how the world geopolitics are becoming more tense, well, I think that there's a lot of significant quantum technologies that can be very disrupted on this space as well. So the conversations need to have across the globe.
Yes, I was actually going to ask you about the dual use, but before I'm going to let you say if you want to add anything to dual use. I do want to attest to what you said. There's two quantum strategies that are public that I wrote or contributed to last year. One is the EU quantum strategy, and the other one is the Tony Blair Institute's their paper for the UK government. And in both of those cases, the responsibility and the global aspect and the global south is like prominently present. So that's one observation. And the other one, just going to different quantum events last year, Africa is, well, I went to Europe mostly, but Africa is visible in a way that it was not before. So something has definitely happened there.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
But do you want to add anything on this dual use and geopolitical thinking, other than that it's in a turmoil and people are trying to figure things out?
I mean, I think that I'm careful about saying it without like creating the controversial hype sometimes that gets built around some of these conversations, right? Like the quantum communication and quantum encryption, like it's very important that I don't want to, there's like on the internet, it's like, oh, Q day is coming and it's all being framed as like the Y2K kind of thing. It's like, it's going to be the end of the internet pretty much, or something like that. And I think that is not necessarily like that, but it is a reality that it's going to be a very disruptive technology once it's fully implemented, and governments need to be ready, right? Like, and so if the conversations are not happy and not happening, and then these strategies from the different regions are not being established from the perspective of like, yeah, quantum communication and quantum cryptography are things that, you know, we need to be thinking and developing governance around it, and at the, you know, UN level this also needs to be happening, then it's going to be leaving some regions much more vulnerable than others, and then that also creates an imbalance. So that's one of the aspects of the dual purpose, right? Like there's also in quantum sensing, right? Like a lot of these sensors that are great for detecting water or other things. The reality is that many of these sensors can also be used for military purposes, right? And so discussing who gets the IP and how the access to these technologies are, again, are conversations that have a significant influence in our geopolitical context, and it's important that people realize that.
Yeah, so important. Thank you. Thanks for this, Claudia. Okay, so tell our listeners, some of which may be going, most probably not going, but we're all curious. What can we expect to happen in the closing ceremony? What's the biggest takeaway from the year, and then what happens next?
Sure. I mean, I hope that many people go, but also the good thing is that we will be live streaming the ceremony, so everybody will be able to have access to see it. So I think that I mentioned this a bit already, but I think the closing ceremony is more of it's a celebration of all the accomplishment of the year, but also I think it is more as a hands-off, right? We will be talking about highlighting what has happened in this year, what has been the things that, you know, we're most proud of. And then, you know, we will also have conversations about what still remains to do, because we have not solved like access or infrastructure or the global mobility. But I think that one of the biggest takeaways from this year is that people are realizing that quantum is not just like a scientific frontier, but it's like a part of our societal conversation. And I want people to understand that they can participate, and people need assurance that these technologies will be developed responsibly. So what we need to make sure that the conversations lead to into the closing ceremony is like the continuity, the sustainability. You know, we'll emphasize the shift from awareness to delivery, like push into building more education and workforce pathways in different regions, supporting more cross-border collaboration, and building standards so different ecosystems can plug in, and then keeping a responsible governance conversations happening. So Quantum 2025 was about awareness, and the IYQ post period is about building these infrastructures that we discussed in the year.
Thanks so much for this, Claudia. My last question on this podcast is always a personal one, so this one is for you. As the year is coming to an end, will you be withdrawing from the role as the Secretariat Coordinator? Are you getting back some free time in your life, perhaps? Or will there be a UNESCO role for you and the quantum industry going forward?
Well, I tell my boss yesterday, it's like I've been joking about a sabbatical,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's so much as a sabbatical. I think that I will be for sure taking some real time off because it has been wonderful, but it has been definitely intense. So I do hope to get some freer time back. But so the role of a secretariat coordinator has always been in service of the convening, right? Helping align partners, keeping the momentum, making it easier for people across different regions to engage in something bigger than their just local network. So in that regard, it will continue, right? Like we're not stopping, we're not dropping it. But the intensity of the role will change for sure. And I do see some spaces for continuing through APS and our partnership, right? We'll build this partnership with UNESCO. UNESCO is continuing with their Global Quantum Initiative and other organizations as well. So I think that of convening, connecting, and making sure that, people stay on track for and connected to this ecosystem will still be part of my role. I think that UNESCO and other organizations have a huge role to play to build the sustainability of this and, grow the ecosystem responsibly. But it is, we will all be part of it, plugging in, and I'll be taking more of a supporting role than the coordinating role.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. This has been Claudia Fracchiolla, Head of Public Engagement at the American Physical Society and the Secretariat Coordinator for the UNESCO-endorsed International Year of Quantum Science and Technology. It was my pleasure to have you visit Deep Pockets again.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have this conversation with you, Petra.
You've listened to Deep Pockets with Petra Söderling, the show about government and innovation. If you liked today's episode, please subscribe, like, and share our show in your social media. It means a lot to me and to my guests. The wonderful music you heard is by a New Orleans Hall of Fame jazz icon Leroy Jones. Find this and other Leroy Jones tunes wherever you get your music. This podcast, as well as the recording of my audiobook, is done by Chris Elliott at Studio Aguse in south of France. Get in touch with Chris to book studio time in our beautiful village, and why not come and taste the natural local wines from La Robina Winery while you're here. À votre santé!
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.